living in a lonely world. She took the midnight train going anywhere.
Just a city boy, born and raised in South Detroit. He took a midnight train going anywhere.
A singer in a smoky room, smell of wine and cheap perfume. For a smile they can share the night. It goes on and on and on and on. Strangers waiting up and down the boulevard. Their shadows searching in the night. Street lights, people living just to find emotion, hiding somewhere in the night. Working hard to get my fill. Everybody wants a thrill. Laying anything but roll the dice just one more time. Some will win, some will lose. Some are born to sing the blues. Oh, the movie never ends. It goes on and on and on and on. Strangers waiting up and down the boulevard. Their shadows searching in the night. Street lights, people living just to find emotion, hiding somewhere in the night. Don't stop believing. Hold on to that feeling. Street lights, people. Don't stop believing. Hold on to that feeling. Street lights, people. Don't stop believing. Hold on. Street lights, people. Don't stop believing.
Hey, it's MJ, pronoun she, her, and hers. And I just want to say good morning or good evening based on wherever you are in the world and welcome you to Neighborhood Church. This morning I'm going to be reciting a poem for you all. It's called A Prayer for the Tired, Angry Ones by Laura Jean Truman. God, we're so tired. We want to do justice, but the work feels endless and the results look so small in our exhausted hands. We want to love mercy, but our enemies are relentless and it feels like foolishness to prioritize gentleness in this unbelievably cruel world. We want to walk humbly, but self-promotion is seductive and we are afraid that if we don't look after ourselves, then no one else will. We want to be kind. but our anger feels insatiable. Jesus, in this never-ending wilderness, come to us and grant us grace. Grant us the courage to keep showing up to impossible battles, trusting that it is our commitment to faithfulness and not our obsession with results that will bring in your shalom. God, grant us the vulnerability to risk loving our difficult and complicated neighbor, rejecting the lie that some people are made more in the image of God than others. Grant us in the humility of a discentered but beloved self. As we continue to take the single step that is in front of us, Jesus, keep us from becoming what we are called to transform. Protect us from using the empires of violence in your words, in our theology, in our activism, and in our politics for your kingdom of peace. Keep our anger from becoming meanness. Keep our sorrow from collapsing into self-pity. Keep our hearts soft enough to keep breaking. Keep our outrage turned towards justice, not cruelty. Remind us that all of us, every bit of it, is for love. Keep us fiercely kind. Amen.
Hi neighbors! My name is Miss Trisha and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. And it's time for the children's moment. So come on, get real close, come and sit up, find your spot for the story today. So this week, did you guys open up your little Easter egg? Yeah? What did you find inside? You found a piece of tissue. That's funny. Why would you find a piece of tissue? Oh yeah, because our verse this week is that Jesus wept. That Jesus experienced big feelings, and Jesus shows us it's okay to experience big feelings. So I'm going to start by reading our friend's book, How Are You Peeling? Can you guys all see it? And it is by Saxton Fryman and Joseph Elfers. How are you feeling? This is a really important question. Do you guys ever have big feelings? Do you maybe feel really sad and like you're missing stuff? Do you miss your friends? Maybe if you've had the loss of a loved one, or even miss the sunshine when it's cold outside? Yeah. What are some other things that you miss? Yeah, I miss those too. Well, the good news is, friends, that no matter if our feelings are happy, sad, feeling blue, or feeling bad, Jesus has been there with us. That as long as our feelings are there, we can express them. As long as we express them in ways that don't hurt our bodies or somebody else. Friends, I encourage you to listen this week as Angie tells the story about Jesus and Jesus' friends, to maybe figure out the ways that you've been holding some emotions and maybe some of the ways that you need to let those go. I get it, friends. It's been a really hard year, and I'm missing a lot of things too. I'm missing all of you. And grief is not something to be ashamed about or sad about, but something to recognize that it's a part of this life that we live and that Jesus recognized it too. And so my prayer for you this week, friends, is that you would find a way to either go on a walk, see the sunshine, talk to a grown-up, and begin to process some of those big feelings. And we'll come back next week to talk more about feelings. I hope you guys have a great week. I'm going to pray for us real quick. Dear God, I thank you so much that you know everything that we've been through and everything we will be through. God, I pray that you would be with us this week as we process what it means to be a whole year in this corona tide. God, I pray you would Be with us in our big feelings, our small feelings, and all the feelings in between, and bring people and grown-ups that can help us to process those. We love you, and it's in your name we pray. Amen. Bye, neighbors.
All alone, I didn't like the feeling. All alone, I sat and cried. All alone, I tried to find some meaning in the center of the pain I felt inside. All alone, I came into this world. All alone, I will someday die. Solid stone is just sand and water, baby. Sand and water, and a million years gone by. I will see you in the light of 1,000 suns. I will hear you in the sound of the waves. I will know you when I come, as we all will come to the door beyond the grave. All alone, I heal this heart of sorrow. All alone, I raise this child. Flesh and bone, he's just bursting toward tomorrow, and his laughter fills my world and wears your smile. I will see you in the light of 1,000 suns. I will hear you in the sound of the waves. I will know you when I come, as we all must come through the door beyond the grave. All alone, I came into this world. All alone, I will someday die. Solid stone is just sand and water, baby. Sand and water, and a million years gone by.
Hi friends, I'm Angie Woodworth. I'm one of the pastors here at Neighborhood, and I'm so glad to be with you this morning, even if we can't be together in person, and I miss you so very much. I want to share our scripture passage with you this morning, but if you've looked at it, you will see that it is maybe the shortest, well, it's the shortest passage in the Bible, shortest verse in the Bible, but it is also the shortest verse we've ever done at Neighborhood. We're big believers in telling the whole story, but Today, I'm going to literally just tell you a little bit about it and then share with you this one little verse, because the verse from John chapter 11, verse 35, which if you grew up, God bless you, with Bible memorization drills or sword drills or whatever they call them in whatever tradition you grew up in, you probably knew this one because it's short and easy. So the Gospel of John chapter 11, verse 34, and most in like the older versions just said Jesus wept. In the Common English Bible, it says, Jesus began to cry. Now, what's happening in this story is that Jesus' dear friend, Lazarus, has died. He was sick, and his sisters, Jesus is also close with his sisters, Mary and Martha, and they sent for him, and he didn't come. He waited, and it explicitly says he waited. And then he comes to see Lazarus, and Lazarus has already died. And they encounter him. Lazarus's people encounter him, and Martha comes out to meet him in the road and says, like, if you had come, he wouldn't have died. You could have saved him, and you didn't come. Now, what goes on to happen is that Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead and says he's not dead, he's sleeping, and raises Lazarus from the dead. And we get this beautiful story of Lazarus who's been in the tomb. And this is what we call foreshadowing, right? Of what will happen for Jesus. But Lazarus who's been in the tomb for long enough to be really, really dead, right? And he's like wrapped up in binding cloths that they would use for a body. And Jesus says, Lazarus, come out. And Lazarus comes out of the tomb alive. And Jesus knows he can do this. We are really unclear about, there's all kinds of speculation, all kinds of scholarly conversations and theological conversations and all kinds of thoughts we could have about why Jesus waited to come, why he raised Lazarus from the dead, why all these things happened in this kind of wild miracle story. But a story that's rooted in Jesus' deep love for some of his absolute closest friends, right? He has the disciples, but these folks are also disciples. They're not the 12, part of the 12, but they are disciples and leaders in ministry with Jesus. And there's a whole lot of why in this story. But what I want us to think about today is that for whatever reason, maybe he was overcome with his own grief. Maybe he knew that things were going to be all right because he knew that God was part of making good out of even this horrible situation. But when he encountered his friend's grief and he saw those tears, sometimes seeing other people cry, like, gets ya, right? Maybe seeing Martha's tears and other friends' tears, like, struck him. Maybe he had some experience of contributing to that pain by not coming earlier or by letting Lazarus die when he was planning to have him be alive. All of this is big mysteries to us. Are big mysteries, all of these questions? Talking about grammar. But in this moment, what we also see, regardless of the answer to any of those questions, what we see is God in flesh as a human being and God, right? Jesus is both, who has full access to the range of emotions of humanity. Next week, we're going to talk about Jesus getting angry. Today, we're talking about Jesus being sad and overwhelmed with grief, and that Jesus cried. And so we're going to talk today about how our tears are holy too. And that if Jesus can cry, it's all right for us to cry too. So I want you to hear this again as we've just passed the 1-year anniversary of really the US and city of Atlanta experiencing a full year of COVID. And so many hard things in the last year that are not all the way over. So much injustice, so much pain, so much struggle. And Jesus sees it all. And Jesus began to cry. This is the word of God for all of us who are the beloved children of God. Will you say thanks be to God? Will you pray with me? God, you are here with us. And I give you thanks for that because we need you. God, sometimes the grief is overwhelming. Sometimes we would choose to ignore it. Sometimes, God, we don't even have tears or words because it's just too much to even think about. God, sometimes we've cried all the tears we have. And sometimes, God, the tears are right there, ready to come at any moment. Sometimes, God, we've been able to move to looking for signs of hope. And as spring starts to pop up around us, God, we remember that new life comes even in what seems like the most barren land. So God, I pray that you will be with us today, that you will help us hold space for all of who we are and all of what we feel, and that you would help us remember that you felt it too, all of it, through Jesus Christ. Love in flesh. Amen. So when we start talking about it's safe to cry, like your tears are holy, your grief is valid, do any other 80s or maybe 70s babies or folks who raised 70s and 80s babies see Rosie Greer on screen, like that red plaid shirt with Marlo and friends, Free to Be You and Me, singing It's All Right to Cry? Was I the only child absolutely addicted to that movie? I think we checked out the VHS from the Decatur Library so many times it was worn thin. I'll try to include it in the YouTube link to it and tomorrow in the email. But I just have that song in my head all the time as we're talking about like your tears are holy and your grief is valid, whatever it is. Even if it feels first world or menial or not as significant as other people, like what you are experiencing is valid. And you are beloved by God and you are holy, so it is holy. And it's all right to cry. Crying takes the sad out of you. I think those words are so deeply embedded in my bones. And feelings were accepted in my house. And so I think it's never been in question to me that we should be able to process our feelings and have them, right? And if you're someone who grows, does spiritual growth through the Enneagram, I'm a 4, and so I have a lot of feelings. Like I process the world through feelings, which makes this year particularly shocking to me because at some point I stopped feeling things. I felt so numb because it was so much to feel. And that's when I knew I was in a rough place because that's so antithetical to how I live my life. And I think I'm still struggling with that. I mean, I think lots of us are still struggling. And, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, if you've ever studied psychology or anything like that, talked about the 5 stages of grief in death and dying. And it's really contemplating and coming to terms with one's own end of life. But I think they are helpful things to think about. Let's see, there are more, but she identified 5 of denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And I think those are still often very valid for any of us experiencing grief. But what's tricky about grief is it doesn't come in a linear fashion. And it's not always sadness, right? Like she identified anger is part of grief, right? denial and like absolute ignoring of the situation can be part of grief, right? Acting out our feelings of frustration or hyper focusing on some other situation and putting all of our energy there, or problem solving left and right. Many of us have been cleaning out closets, not just because we were home bored, but because we needed control over something, because we were grieving the loss of control in our lives, right? So many things can play out as grief, and it doesn't happen in a linear fashion, and it doesn't happen the same for everyone. And all of that's okay. So some of us are numb. Some of us have been in a really sad place and felt lonely and isolated. And now that springtime is happening and we are able to be outdoors again, we are seeing signs of beauty and joy and hope, and we're feeling good. Lots of us are feeling happy that vaccines are becoming more prevalent. Many of you are getting vaccinated, and I'm always so glad to hear those updates of when you're able to be vaccinated. And that's making a lot of us feel like there's light at the end of this tunnel, and maybe I'm even starting to walk out into the light, right? And some of us may be choosing to leave this behind and choosing to just move on because a year is long enough. I would contend that that's not where we are wholly yet as a society, but there are things we can do to be safe and start trying to find our way back to whatever the new normal will be. That's what our next few months will be like together as a congregation. And we'll be able to celebrate that in Easter as we start to figure out and announce ways we can start to be together in some safe venues. But I also think it's important to know that grief just shows up unexpectedly too, right? It may seem that we are back to normal, whatever the new normal is, in a few months, and then it hits us like a ton of bricks. The things we gave up this past year, or the things we didn't get to do, or the people we aren't with anymore as we move forward and celebrate being back, right? So it's going to pop up in unexpected ways. So figuring out how to hold our grief in safe and healthy ways, and how to process it, how to be present with it, how to put it aside when we need to, and then, but not leave it behind in a way that's like just smushing things down and not taking care of ourselves, right? We don't want to do that. We want to be healthy, whole people as we navigate through this. And I'm reminded that I don't know if any of you have ever had the horrible experience of panic attacks. I have, and it is absolutely overwhelming, all-consuming, terrifying when it happens the first time. And what I'm reminded of is that panic attacks often happen when you're past the danger, when you're past the tension, right? My therapist kind of talked about it like a rubber band getting wound really, really, really tightly, and you can handle it. You're handling it. You have to handle it because the situation is still going on, whatever it is, right? And it's wound and it's wound and it's wound. And then when the situation releases, right, when it's over and you can unwind, sometimes that like whips out all that energy just releases of that super tight wound rubber band. And that's when like your body is like goes into full panic mode, right? Like you're not actually in crisis. You're sitting in your house on a Friday night. In my case, I was driving down the road one day and like a thing had changed and ended. And all of a sudden I could like breathe from that situation, and like full on panic attack that seemed to be unrelated to anything, right? And I think some of us are going to start feeling grief like that in some ways. We have been soldiering through. We have been finding ways to make do. We've been helping our kids. We've been helping our jobs. We've been checking in on people. We've been making do, being by ourselves in our house for so many months. We've been being responsible. We've been being diligent. And then when we can breathe a little bit, it may overwhelm us. So what I want you to know is that it's okay. It's okay. If you have mourned and wept and grieved and been under the covers more than not, some days or for weeks, That is okay. If you've been going and doing, and then all of a sudden you find yourself sobbing in the shower one day, that is okay. Like, it is beautiful to hold those feelings, right? And that God is with us, not just hypothetically with us, but that Jesus in flesh, Jesus as a human, God as a human, felt those feelings too. Even though he had power over life and death, he felt grief. He felt betrayal. He felt loss, and he wept. And so there is nothing that we experience that is beyond the depth of God's love and presence with us. One of my guilty pleasures, now I just feel committed because it's been on for so long, but I watch Grey's Anatomy. Early on, it was sort of a guilty pleasure, and now I've just been watching it for something like 17 years, and it just won't end, right? So maybe, but I feel like I can't quit now. But one of the many years ago seasons had an episode where one of the main characters was experiencing just horrible loss, horrible grief, and couldn't function. Like, many of us who've experienced depression might have experienced something like this. An explicit experience of grief can prompt us to this. And she ends up laying on their bathroom floor, just too tired to get up, too tired to be able to function, too stuck. And instead of trying to keep fixing it or solving the problem for her or picking her up and dragging her out, her friend just lies down on the floor beside her, and they hold hands. Just reaches out and takes her hand, lying down on the floor beside her. And as crazy as it seems that I might find an image of God in Grey's Anatomy, that is such a powerful image of God's presence to me, and God's presence with us. That yes, there are answers, there are solutions, there are paths, there are things that we can participate in to move towards healing and wholeness. But sometimes we're not ready. Or sometimes we have been doing all the things and we are exhausted and we just need to lie down and then we can't get up again for a little while. And God doesn't try to shame us out of it. God doesn't try to pep talk us out of it when we're not ready for that. God doesn't try to fix it for us when we're not ready for that. God just lies down with us and takes our hand, so we are not alone. You are not alone, friends. Wherever you are on this journey, whether you are actively weeping or whether you have been able to move to some joy and some hope, or whether you're back and forth, you are not alone. I hope you know this community is with you, and I hope you know that God is with you. And if you want to experience conversation on my porch together, or if you need me to come to your house and sit on your porch so you don't have to go so far, we can do that. Also, a text and call so you don't even have to get out of bed if you need to talk. And we're going to take a few minutes in the rest of this service to think about ways that we can process. And we've done a lot of breathing this series because it's important. And we're going to do more of it today, twice. Kristen's going to come, our spiritual director, who's one of our community partners, and work with us on a way to literally hold our grief a little bit. Because no matter who we are, what we've been through this year, even if we've had it pretty easy, there is grief that is real, and we need to take a minute to hold. And then Lynnea Smith Crawford, who is the director and one of the therapists at Kaleidoscope Family Therapy, who is another one of our community partners. I've invited her to come and share a few ways that we can help handle our grief. Maybe you need these tips today. Maybe you want to kind of jot some notes or keep this service tag to come back to. She's going to offer us a few ways, including a breathing technique, that we can process and handle some of our grief. We focus so much on breathing because it helps us center and it helps our bodies calm down. And I want you to remember every time you hear one of these wise folks talking about breathing, that the Spirit of God is the breath of life. And that every time we breathe in, we are able to breathe God into ourselves. And remember, we don't have to live on our own power. It's all right to cry, friends. It's all right to laugh. It's all right to dance with joy when you get vaccinated, when you get to see the forsythia and the quince and the red buds and the daffodils coming up. It's all right to be you, however you need to be you. And you are not alone, friends. You are beloved.
Hey, I'm Kristen Vincent. My pronouns are she and hers. I'm a spiritual director and a community partner with Neighborhood Church. This week we are considering our grief. Certainly there has been much to grieve in the last year, with the pandemic and injustice and economic insecurity and environmental damage and all kinds of other things. I imagine each of us is holding both personal and communal losses. The spiritual practice I'd like to share with you today is about holding our grief. It's very common for us when we are grieving to want to try to push it away or cover it up with technology or to-do lists. Or we may just not know what to do with our grief and especially how to share it with God. So what I'm going to do today is invite you into a period of silence, and we'll start by just finding our breath the way we've done in previous weeks. Finding your breath just means paying attention to when you inhale and exhale, and that helps bring us into the present moment. And then what I'd like for you to do is to consider what you are grieving, what you have been grieving for the last days or months, for the last year or maybe years. Consider what your losses are. And then if you will take your hands and just hold them like a cup, a bowl, or a vessel. And what I'd like for you to do is to consider that you are holding your grief, that you are holding those things that you are grieving. And as you do, I want you to just hold them. Don't judge your grief as either hard or sad or bad or intolerable. Don't try to push it away. Just create space for it. Just hold it gently. Hold it lightly. And as you do, imagine that your hands are God's hands. And that who is really holding your grief is God. And so for the next minute, I'd like for you to just sit and hold your grief. You are not alone in your grief. God is with you, helping you to hold it, to create space for it. And when you can just hold space for your grief, then maybe that invites you to just be with it and to grieve. And then eventually be able to give it over to God so that it is no longer so overwhelming or tiresome. And so that eventually you can see the light and know that God is with you. Thanks be to God. Amen.
For all who labor without aim, hear our prayer, O God. For all who lonely seek a friend, hear our prayer, O God. For all who grieve and all who fear, hear our prayer, O God. For all who wait as death draws near, hear our prayer, O God. Holy Healer, your people call your name, send your Spirit, hear our prayer. Holy Healer, your people call your name, send your Spirit, hear our prayer. For all who search for righteousness, hear our prayer, O God. All live the faith that faith confesses, hear our prayer, O God. For those with whom our lives are bound, hear our prayer, O God. And those we name in silent sound, hear our prayer, O God. Holy Healer, your people call your name, send your Spirit, hear our prayer. Holy Healer, your people call your name, send your Spirit, hear our prayer. That peace may come in our own day, hear our prayer, O God. That your blessed word may light our way, hear our prayer, O God. Your name be hallowed far and wide, hear our prayer, O God. Your reign of justice long abide, hear our prayer, O God. Holy Healer, your people call your name, send your Spirit, hear our prayer. Holy Healer, your people call your name, send your Spirit, hear our prayer. Send your Spirit, hear our prayer. Send your Spirit, hear our prayer.
Hi, beautiful souls. My name is Lynnea Smith Crawford, and I'm a licensed therapist and holistic healer. As we approach the 1-year anniversary to the COVID-19 shutdown, I wanted to take some time to, one, extend so much empathy towards everyone who has lost someone in this pandemic, and also extend so much empathy and sympathy towards everyone who may not have lost someone, but has felt the collective grief and the collective loss that we've all felt in this year. And so the first thing that I wanted to offer was giving yourself some grace. It's been a year since we've been in this pandemic, and so a lot of us feel like it's time for us to get back to normal, right? It's time for us to not feel the grief, the pain, the hurt, the struggle that has been this year. And so I'm here to remind you that a year in a pandemic is not a long time, and that you have to extend yourself grace and to know that you will get back to that bandwidth that you had before the pandemic when it's time. But also acknowledging and accepting the fact that you might not function in the capacity that you did pre-COVID-19. And that's not to say that that's a bad thing or that something's wrong, but we're just in a new era now. We've gone through a collective experience of grief and loss, and through that came awareness, it came acceptance, it came the ability for us to pull together as a collective for a common goal of healing and a common goal of love. And so the first thing that I want you to do in this moment is to extend yourself a little extra grace and understand that it's okay if you do not have the same bandwidth you did a year and a half ago. It is your journey. We're all grieving together. And I just want you to extend that extra grace to yourself. The second thing that I want to offer is beginning to engage in holistic practices that really help calm your nervous system. So we know that when we're experiencing really big emotions, in particular trauma triggers, grief, loss, anxiety, and things like that, we know that our nervous system is out of whack, right? It's not centered, it's not where it's supposed to be. And so finding practices that really help you center and ground down is really helpful, especially when you're experiencing trauma, triggers, grief, or loss. And one of the breathing exercises that I want to offer you is my signature 426 box breathing model. And so what you'll do is you'll inhale through your nose for a count of 4. You'll hold your breath for a count of 2, and then exhale slowly through your mouth for a count of 6. And so whenever you're feeling big emotions coming up, whether it's due to grief, whether it's due to trauma, whether it's due to triggers, this is a simple yet effective tool that you can use to help you balance your nervous system. And I'd like for us to try it here together. So again, we're inhaling through the nose for a count of 4, holding the breath for a count of 2, and then exhaling slowly through the mouth for a count of 6. We'll do it 3 times here together. So take a moment to get comfortable. Maybe you close your eyes if that feels safe for you. And let's just take a deep inhale through the nose, and then open mouth, sigh it out. Take a deep breath in through the nose for a count of 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold the breath for a count of 1, 2, and exhale slowly out of the mouth for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Inhale for 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold the breath for 1, 2. Exhale slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. One more on your own. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. And slowly blinking your eyes open if they were closed. So I hope that that's something you can also take with you, is that quick breathing exercise to really help you balance your nervous system and really ground down into yourself and connect with your body. The next thing I want to offer is giving yourself a moment to really feel and process these emotions. A lot of times we try to put these big emotions, especially when it's concerning trauma or grief, we like to put it in a box and then deal with it another day. And so I encourage you to take some time to really sit and feel those emotions. Feel the pain, feel the grief, process the loss, and maybe you journal about it. I find that writing out our feelings on a piece of paper really helps us get out of the processing logically of the emotions into the right brain, which is the feeling of the emotions. And when we can take time to really feel and honor and process our emotions, it really has the power to allow us to heal from trauma, grief, and loss. And if you feel like the pain or the grief is too much for you to process alone, I highly encourage and highly recommend that you seek out a licensed therapist to help you along this journey of processing your grief and your loss. And then the last thing I want to offer you is an affirmation practice. And so affirmations are short and simple yet powerful phrases that we say to ourselves that have the power to shape our reality. And so you might wonder how affirmations could help in a time of grief and loss. And so affirmations are really just speaking things into existence. It's reminding ourselves of the things that we can and have the power to embody. And so in this time of grief, I find it really important to affirm and remind ourselves of what we're grateful for. I find it important to affirm and remind ourselves that we are connected to other people and we have a connection and we have a tribe. And I also find it important to remind ourselves that we are resilient, right? We are resilient. We have the power to make it through, and that each day that we can continue to honor our emotions, tap into gratitude, tap into strategies that help our nervous system balance out, that we can experience that power of resilience, and that we know that we can make it another day, and that eventually joy will come in and the sun will shine where there's been rain. And so again, affirmations are another practice that I think are helpful. And so 3 affirmations that I want you to recite to yourself right now are: I am grateful, I am connected, I am resilient. And before, I know I said that was the last thing, but another thing, and this is the last thing I'll leave you with, is engaging in a daily practice of gratitude. And I want to encourage and remind you that joy and gratitude can live where there is pain, where there is grief, where there is suffering. So many times we get so sucked into the pain of the loss, and all of that is valid. But when we are so focused on the loss and the pain, we often forget that we also can experience joy. We also can experience gratitude in this moment. And so I want you to commit to finding at least one thing that you can be grateful for each day, one thing that you can extend gratitude towards. And if you are a person who has lost someone in this pandemic, I want you to think about how you can extend gratitude to that life. What are you grateful for? The moments that you shared with that person, the talks that you had, what can you extend gratitude towards? Because I find that when we can shift to a mindset and a perspective of gratitude, it really has the power to shape our reality. It really has the power to invite joy back into those areas where grief lived. And it also has the power to help us remind ourselves that even though we're experiencing pain, grief, loss, trauma, depression, all of these heavy things, that gratitude can help us stay grounded. Gratitude can really be the answer when we are experiencing all of these big emotions. I hope that these tips and offerings were helpful for you. I encourage you to try all of these things. Maybe you break them up 1 week at a time. You try one of the strategies and really take a moment to notice. Do you notice a difference? Do you see a shift? And so again, extending so much gratitude for you, extending so much compassion and so much empathy and sympathy to everyone who has experienced this traumatic experience, this collective grief. And so with this collective grief, I also hope and pray that we can all find collective healing.
Amen. Neighbors, it is time in our service where we have our moment of response, where we take the time to reflect on all that we have experienced in today's service in order to think intentionally of the ways that we can implement these strategies and the lessons or the songs into the week and the days to come. If you don't know, my name is Kylan and my pronouns are he, his, and him, and I serve as the Restorative Practices Director here at Neighborhood Church. Friends, today I am leaving from this service giving myself permission to grieve this year of difficulty, is the best way to put it. But I hope that you take from this space that your grief is valid, that your tears are holy, that having all of the big emotions, the big expressions that we've seen in our children's moment is good, and there is a space for all of those things here. You can always, if you want to chat more about those things, join us right after service for our connecting small group or circle that we'll have there. And you can find that link in your worship guide. And we have that link below. And then also you can find that link in your e-news that comes out every Thursday. Friends, you are always welcome to give into the life and the ministry of Neighborhood Church. Great things and good things are still happening. And it is just so exciting every single week to be back with you all and to share with you all. Lastly, we are winding down our literacy campaign for our first quarter of our justice work for restorative practices. So today I am in front of my rainbow bookshelf here that I love so much. Shout out to MJ, our lovely intern, for organizing my rainbow bookshelf. I seen it on Pinterest and I just had to have one. But friends, speaking of books, we have exceeded our goal of 200 books for the Metropolitan Regional Youth Detention Center. Don't worry, we're still accepting. More is always better. But in one short week, you all showed up and you have showed out with the calls and the emails and the drop-offs and the pickups. And my heart is truly happy. Neighbors, I knew that you could do it. I knew that we could do it. And we have done it. We are still raising money for our Solidarity Fund. So need some help there. In order to be able to support the Aya Educational Institute, who is building out their framework for a K-5 African-centered educational school. Also for the I Love My Future HBCU, which is a book that we read in our February series during this month. But also they have amazing literacy project supporting Title I schools. And helping to do great work there with school-wide distributions, not only of the book, but with the proper tools and resources in order for them to be successful. And lastly, we still have Project Transformation. You all have supported in such an amazing way, but we are still pushing because we are just determined to be able to support a college student this summer and offer them a summer internship with the Project Transformation organization. So friends, keep up all of the great and amazing work. Keep and continue holding space for yourself and receive this as your benediction. Go knowing that all of who you are is loved by God. Go once again knowing that your tears are holy and that your grief is valid. This thing called life, take it day by day. But if the days seem to be overwhelming, then you can always break it down to step by step or moment by moment. Go in love, friends. We always love you here at Neighborhood Church. Hope you have a great week. See you later.
This is not the end of us. We will open our eyes, right. This is not our last. This is not